main event, of course, Terence Crawford undefeated against Israel Madrimov, undefeated. And of course, this man right here, one of the biggest, one of the best promoters in the game, putting on this event. Eddie, how are you, brother? Good to see you again.
Yeah, I'm doing great, Michael. Good to speak to you. And yeah, I mean, I can't quite believe what's happening August 3rd. I mean, throw in a bit of Eminem as well, performing a few tracks, and it's going to be a wild night in Los Angeles, August 3rd.
Yeah, that's how you know it's good, Eddie. When you don't even mention that you've got Eminem also performing. So if the boxing wasn't enough for the fans out there, you basically get a mini free Eminem concert. Eddie, talk to me first of all about the main event. Obviously, Terence going up. Israel is a young guy, undefeated, hasn't lost. I mean, is this toughest challenge for Terence?
I think it's a big banana skin, to be honest with you. I mean, look, Terence, in my opinion, is pound for pound number one. I mean, Israel Madrimov is with me, and Terence is not.
Yep.
And I really want to beat him. I also admire him and respect him, and he's also a really nice guy, like funny guy. Credit to the sport, but you see, the thing is with these greats is they go through the weight divisions because they have to for their legacy, and they're just too good. You know, he won the lightweight world title at 135 pounds. Then won every belt at 140, every belt at 147. And the hope is that eventually you go too far. You know, you come up against a bigger man, a stronger man. And I believe that could be Madrimov. I mean, this guy was one of the best amateurs to ever come out of Uzbekistan, undefeated as a professional, just won the world title in Saudi Arabia. A big, strong 154 pounder. You know, he reminds me a little bit of Gennady Golovkin, looks like him as well. You know, carved out of stone, very heavy hands. So this is a brilliant matchup. I think the toughest fight of Terence Crawford's career so far, but he is an outstanding talent, and we got to stop him somehow, and hopefully Madrimov's the man to do it.
So that's interesting, Eddie. So you actually think, and we obviously saw what happened with Bud and Errol heading into Madrimov. You actually think that this is a harder fight than, say, it looked like Crawford or that Spence would be for Crawford?
Yeah, I just think that as good as Spence is, you know, he's a little bit of damaged goods, I think, you know, not just because of the eye stuff and the car crash and, you know, but it's a lot of tough fights. Like Madrimov is never really been tested that deeply as a pro. He's got no battle scars in the professional game. He's at 100% peak in his career right now. Strong, young, like mentally believes in himself. So, and has got the size on Crawford and Spence and those guys. So that was a tremendous win against Errol Spence. I would have liked to have seen that fight maybe a couple of years before.
Yep.
But, you know, Terence is amazing, like his movement, his power and his speed. And it's going to be interesting to see how it transfers up at 154. You know, there's talks of him maybe fighting Canelo Alvarez. You know, our guy, Jaron Ennis, is probably one of the biggest fights in boxing as well against Crawford. So there's a lot of fights to make for Crawford, and I think His Excellency and Riyadh season have plans beyond August 3rd, and it's our job to try and derail them.
Eddie, talk to me about Riyadh season. I think a lot of times people, the way they'll criticize boxing, will say, "Hey, you've got two named guys that we all know and want to see as the main event," and a lot of people were not familiar with, the average fan at least, on the rest of the card. But I mean, you've got Virgil Ortiz, you've got Andy Ruiz, you've got Big Baby Miller. I mean, you've got a lot of really brand name fighters on this card. Is that the Riyadh season influence? Talk to me about, like,
sure. I mean, look,
this is in America now. This is not in Saudi.
Yeah, it's really amazing what's happened. I mean, you know, His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, for those that are not familiar, is kind of the driving force behind boxing in Saudi Arabia. Riyadh season is a part of the year from around October to March in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and their aim is to bring a lot of high-profile sporting events and music acts and everything to Riyadh for the season. Boxing has exploded there so much, and so is the passion of His Excellency, that a lot of the feedback from the fans was, these events are incredible, but we wish we could see them in the UK, or we wish we could see them in America. So he said, okay, well, in a build-up to Riyadh season, let's promote Riyadh season around the world via boxing. And that happens August 3rd in LA and September 21st at Wembley Stadium in London with Anthony Joshua fighting for the world heavyweight title. But it's the depths of these cards that are just insane. And obviously that comes from the financial backing of His Excellency in Saudi Arabia. Because if this was just my show, I couldn't put on this undercard. I mean, it's the biggest night of boxing I think America's ever seen. You know, like you said, you've got Pitbull Cruz, you know, fighting for the world title, one of the biggest names out there at the moment. You've got Andy Ruiz against Jarrell Miller, right? Incredible fight. You've got big baby Jared Anderson, that's probably the biggest heavyweight prospect in the US right now. He's fighting Martin Bakodi. It's a pure 50-50 fight. You know, you've got our guy as well, Andy Cruz, one of the best prospects in the world. It's the deepest card you've ever seen. And, you know, that's his passion for sport. He wants to put on an event that's never been seen before. And like we said earlier, top it off with a few songs from Eminem. And it's the most wild night of boxing I've ever been involved with, you know. So I can't wait. And he's been a brilliant influence in sport. Obviously, we're all of us in boxing are on the train, you know, the bandwagon of these incredible events. And we've all got our fighters fighting on the card. And, you know, it's amazing to be part of them. And quite amazing that he's bringing one to America, because, you know, Riyadh season was always Riyadh season in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now Riyadh season comes to Los Angeles, and it's going to be huge.
I cannot wait. Yeah, I absolutely cannot wait. Before I get you out of here, Eddie, let me ask you about two other topics. First of all, fight going down this weekend. You know, we thought we were going to see Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. That's going to happen a few months from now. How about Jake Paul versus Mike Perry? What, yeah, any thoughts on that fight and how that might go down?
I guess I never know really what to think with all the you know, with the circus of that sort of stuff. But I think Mike Perry looks like a tough man, but he also looks half the size of Jake Paul. And I think, you know, when he was competing at welterweight or middleweight in the UFC. And I think this fight's all the way up at 210 pounds, which is, you know, over the cruiserweight limit. So I think Jake will be too big for him, but Mike looks like a tough guy. I think he'll show plenty of heart, but I think the size will be the problem. And, you know, the road show continues, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's going to end anytime soon. And how about, and lastly, and I asked this, Eddie, because you're one of the most prominent figures in the sport, and you obviously had an up close view, a front row view of all this in the lead up to Devin and Ryan. What do you, any thoughts on what's going on with Ryan Garcia right now? Obviously he's sitting out for a couple more months until the suspension's up. He's been expelled for some of the things he said. I mean, what do you think about what's going on with Ryan?
You know, look, I think Ryan's I've known Ryan for a couple of years, you know, not overly well, but always bumping into him. And he always seemed like a very nice young man.
Yeah.
I think his behavior has changed quite considerably. Everyone knows that. And obviously there's calls from a lot of people around him to get help. It's not as easy as, you know, I think in Ryan's opinion, he's absolutely fine. But obviously people around him know that he's not. And it's not always as easy just to convince someone to go and get that help. You know, that has to come from within. And sometimes something really bad has to happen before, you know, you have to go to the lowest of depths before you kind of face up to that. So I just hope that he can get healthy. You know, obviously what happened against Devin was disappointing for the sport, and not fair on Devin Haney. But I think Ryan Garcia, with a fresh, clear mind, is a great asset to the sport. You know, and he's a very exciting, very talented fighter. But at the moment, you know, the phone's got to go in the drawer. You know, and you just got to clear your mind and get healthy. And we all hope that he can find peace and find that happiness and health.